Regina Rawlinson, actually Mitchum, because that's where my maiden name was Mitchum. So it's Regina Mitchum Rawlinson. And I am a retired educator and author. And right now I have 11 books. I have 3 children. I am married to David Rawlinson, and I live here in South Carolina. I am 7 of 17 children raised in the lower part of South Carolina. And I traveled from South Carolina to Rock Hill, South Carolina, where I finished my degrees.
Sounds like you've traveled a lot and you have a lot of history behind you. Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Well, my childhood, as I said, my parents had 17 children, and I am 7 of the 17. I was raised um, as on a farm, and we were sharecroppers. We owned our own land as well, and we sharecropped as well. And growing up with my siblings, we grew up as a very close-knit family. We played with each other. We worked together in the fields. We did everything together. And so my childhood was a mix of fun with my siblings, but a very, very stressful life. It just seems like every day was stressed because, you worked in the fields and you worked in the fields from several hours, from what they used to say, sun up to sundown. And because of that, life tended to be very stressful on the farm. Not to make my childhood all bad, because it wasn't all bad. As I said, we had fun. I had fun with my siblings, but overall, it was very, very stressful.
What does childhood mean to you?
Childhood means a grasp of a life free from stress. Childhood means a life filled with wonder, filled with the unknown and yet excitement. Childhood means ease and the ability to see things through the eyes of someone who has dreams and aspirations and a mechanism for making those dreams come true.
So you mentioned the stressfulness of how childhood was for you. You also mentioned that you had a lot of fun. Um, Obviously, because of where you are today, education was important in your household.
Mm.
So explain to me how education and success go hand in hand for you and how you grew up.
Growing up, I have to reflect a little bit on my parents. So my father had a 5th grade education. Um, but he was still one of the smartest people I ever met. My mother, after having 17 children, she actually went back to school and graduated high school with me. So she graduated from the adult ed program. And of course, I graduated, you know, from the same school that she went back to finish her diploma with me. So education was very, very important to my parents. Although they were very limited in education themselves, it was very, very important to my parents. And my father always connected education with success. He felt that in order to he felt that education was the great equalizer, I guess, in a way. So he felt that if you were educated, or the more education you got, the better your life would be. And so I picked up that sentiment from him, being the first in my family to graduate from college. Um, I believe that that was part of my obligation, I guess, as a member of the family, to try to at least carry out some of his wishes in his children bettering themselves by going to get education and continue to improve their lives by getting education. And so, in a way, growing up on the farm, being a sharecropper and that sort of thing, in the way it helped me, it motivated me to continue to try to better my life and hopefully to motivate my siblings in order to do some of the same things to better their lives, even though they may not have followed the same path. But my brothers and sisters, most of them are very entrepreneurial. Uh, they do a lot of different things. So that's how growing up on the farm and being connected with my parents the way I was connected and understanding that or believing what they said about education and how it could impact your life. I decided that I would try and to go to school, to graduate, teach, educate. I my heart in my heart and soul I am in a teacher. I am an instructor, I am an educator. Um, I do it in several different ways, not only in the classroom and not only as a school counsel, I do it in several different ways. For example, my coaching program, the Empowerment and Transformation Blueprint, I empower entrepreneurs and professional women to overcome a scarcity mindset, crush self doubt, silence comparison, and build boldly so they own their vision and speak with unshakable confidence. No too late, not ready, or not enough. This is a program built on 4 foundational pillars. Pillar number 1, clarify your what. Through guided self assessment and reflective exercises, clients gain crystal clear clarity on their vision and a path to achieve it. Pillar number 2, discover your root motivators. By exploring the why behind their goals with weekly video guidance, interactive modules, and deep self reflection, they strengthen their inner drive and commitment. Pillar number 3, leverage your commitment. Clients put learning into action through real world implementation, homework assignments, and habit reinforcement to ensure lasting growth. Pillar number 4, push further. Accountability and community fueled progress through weekly group discussions, live Q&A sessions, and peer support to deepen insight and accelerate results. Interested individuals in this program, the Empowerment and Transformation Blueprint, can go to www.villagec.com where they will find links to the coaching program. Mm.
So it sounds like education and success went hand in hand for you.
Yeah.
And obviously, when I was a kid, though, thing, things like sharecropping weren't really a thing. And the difficulties that I was faced with obviously are different than the difficulties that you were faced with. So, how is education, the stresses of childhood, how has that changed today in comparison to what you went through?
I remember my parents talking about how children changed from the time they grew up, how it was so different, how children were disobedient. They didn't listen to their parents and so on and so forth. And then I listen to parents now, they're saying the same thing. So situations have changed, but the same kinds of things, parents are still saying the same kinds of things about children. So the stresses are different, the situations are different, but it tend to end in the same kind of results. Let me give you an example. I am very acquainted with poverty. So people will say there's a difference between urban poverty and rural poverty. That's true because wherein rural poverty, you have to deal with so many different things. Like if you, particularly on a farm, you have to deal with big green worms and you have to deal with gnats and you have to deal with flies and you have to deal with all of those kinds of things. Urban, you deal with city noise and packed apartment houses and packed buildings and people stacked on top of each other. And you may have bugs or you may have rats or whatever you may have. The stresses are different, but the result tend to be the same. The result tend to be stress. The results tend to be scarcity mindset. The result tend to be there's not enough to go around. So yes, the situation is different, and today's kids and how they're raised, the situation they had different things that they have to contend with. Social media. Growing up as a child, we didn't have social media, so we didn't have that stress or that influence of social media, but we had influences. We had influences of our peers. We had influences of the adults around us because when growing up, adults who when I was growing up, adults had more of a community. So adults would sit around and they would talk, and so you would hear the voices of those adults. So you still had those influences when you went to school. You still had those influences. So the influences are different, but the results tend to be the same. Children are influenced by social media. They're influenced by their peers. But that's true from generations to generations. So yes, situations are different. Results are the same.
So, how did you avoid the influences to end up where you are today?
I'm not sure I avoided them. I had my moments. I had my little trickeries going on. Um, but the person, and this is my conviction, this is what I believe. I believe that the voices of voice that you honor will be the voice that have the most influence on your life. If you honor the voices or the influence of the peers more, then they will have that influence on your life. For me, I honored my father's voice more and my mother voice more. And because I honored their voice more, I gave heed to their voice more. And I say more because I, I was not immune to the peer pressure and doing some things that I shouldn't be doing. But because my honor of their voice outweighed more than the peers or the other voices, then I think that's what helped me avoid additional pitfalls, so to speak.
You mentioned earlier that your father was one of the smartest people you knew.
Mhm.
What about your mother? How did she where did she place when it came to things like that in your life? Where do you give her that same degree of reverence and importance?
My mother was and still is what you would call steadfast. She was solid and still is very solid. She knew who she was and she honored who she was always. She was the kindest person in the neighborhood. Of course, I would think that because she's my mother. But I mentioned earlier that she had 17 children. But it did not matter who came to the house, who was around, how many other children was around. She always made sure that they had food and they had whatever she had to share with her children, she shared with other people's children. And and she was also made quilts, so she quilted a lot. So even now, when she can't quilt anymore, she want to make sure that someone she really likes or respect, she will have my sister make the quilt for her now. But when she was able to make quilts, that's what she would do. Or she would bake a cake for someone. Miss Hazel, I want to bake me a jelly cake. And she would bake that jelly cake and she would put all the love that she can put in that jelly cake. Or we used to eat deer. Well, they call it venison now. Then we call it deer. And a funny story about that is that growing up, my father was a hunter too, so he hunted a lot of, fish and deer. So growing up, I just knew it was deer. It wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that deer was Bambi, was the same as reindeer. I didn't realize that. But anyhow, so she would make some venison meat and it was good. And she would always share. When we killed hogs and she would make sure the neighbor, my grandmother or her sisters or other neighbors who didn't have hogs, who didn't raise hogs because we raised hogs, and she would share the hogs that we killed for the winter. So she was always very kind, and every one of her grandchildren, which she made with her own hands, because except for the newer ones, except for the last one that was born in the last 5 years, every one of them have a quilt from grandma because that is one of the things that she wanted to leave for her grandchildren as a legacy. So she was always a solid person, always very kind, always very giving. And that's the legacy that she will leave with her family. She's 99 and a half right now. She will be 100 in November.
Sounds like you honor your parents, not only in your youth, but even today, and you have true love for them. If there's one word, what one word allowed you to have this kind of honor and love for your parents? In one word.
Hard to put it in one word, but if I was to select a word, it would be love.
Well, yes. Mm, yes, love is a good word, but it's clear based off of you speaking of the memory of your father, but also your mother still, that love allows you to also honor them. That love and honor you have for them is something from childhood to adulthood that you had toward them that allowed you to love and honor them the way you do.
Two things: the way they treat the other people and the respect that they had for their convictions. That's what I think
And so you
comes to mind.
and so you recognized the respect they had for others and their convictions and when it comes to their beliefs. And did this allow you to rely on them in some way? Is there something that you felt toward them that you knew you could rely on them in a certain way? Is there a word that reflects reliance for you that you felt towards your parents growing up? You knew you could something with them because of their convictions, their respect, the love they had for you, the love you had for them, that allowed you to lean on them.
And I don't know whether this gets at your question, but here's how I would respond to that. They were always present. And because they were always present, I always felt safe. My family, my parents didn't always say, they were not the kind of parents that says, I love you every day or even hugs every day. But that didn't matter uh, because they loved in so many different ways. And I think when you think about love and how is it expressed, what I want, what I would say to people is this: love is expressed in so many different ways, and don't let anyone tell you how love should be expressed when someone is trying to express love. Society would tell you that you always have hugs and kisses and I love you every day and all that sort of stuff. That matters, but love comes in so many ways and so many shades and so many shapes and so many different things. So for me, and when I was growing up, my parents was always present. And they were present in so many ways. They were present, not only their physical presence, but their emotional presence, their spiritual presence, their energy was always around, even when they were not there, even when they were not in the same space. The energy of them were there because while they were there, their presence were just so amazing. It was just so thick and heavy. I remember when my parents would what they would do, go to town because we lived in a very small farming community, so they would have to travel 15, 20 miles to go shopping for big time groceries, like sacks of rice and stuff like that, because we ate a lot of rice. I still love rice today. But they would always leave the older one in charge in their stead. So it was like having them there always, even when they were not there. But their presence was so well placed. That's what I would say about that they were always present. And that's one thing I would say to young parents or other people. It's important to be present, not only physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Presence is so very important. That's what I would say about that.
What would you say to parents and educators to help redirect harmful thinking before it takes root?
Before it takes root, um, that's an interesting question because children learn very fast from 0 to 3 years old. So I would say to parents from the very beginning, whatever way they deem appropriate, is number one, try to give that child a sense of self and self worth. Um, because if a child has a sense of self and self worth from the beginning, then you can build upon that. I would also say to parents and teachers, because some kids go to pre-K and even from birth, is try to build a world of trust for that child. Um, because if a child growing up trusting themselves and trusting the world, then the interaction with the world will be much better. Not in a naive way. You know, you still want kids to be careful and stranger danger, that kind of stuff. But when I say trust in a way that they see the world as a place where they can grow. They see the world as not a place where that is always taking from them, but a place that is willing to give to them, and vice versa. It's a reciprocal relationship. I think the most important thing is that they try to give the child a sense of self and self-worth and then build from there. Watch your own behavior, because kids pick up very early. They watch everything you do. They watch your actions. They don't care about your words that much, but they watch your actions. They watch what you do, so it doesn't no matter so much what you say, but they watch what you do. So I would say be the best person that you can be, and it um based on your values, based on your integrity, be the best person you could be because kids are watching that. And if you have self-worth for yourself, if you believe in yourself, if you don't have these limiting beliefs yourself, because if you have limiting beliefs yourself, you definitely will pass it on to your kids. It's almost like using the flight attendant model. Um, if something goes wrong, put on your mask first, and then you're able to help those who are around you. So thinking about that model, if parents and teachers think about their self-worth first and model that for kids, then kids will pick up on that and they will have self-worth themselves. So as adults, we have to be careful what they do and what they're modeling for those kids. That's how I would respond to that. Because another thing, because limiting belief is very easy to pick up. I'm not worth this. I don't deserve this. Um, you got to work hard for anything. Nothing comes easy. Money doesn't grow on trees. You have to pay your dues. All of those are limiting beliefs. And if we're living those kind of limiting beliefs with kids gonna pick that up and they're just gonna repeat the cycle. That's why sometimes it is so hard to get out of a cycle of repeating things that for generations, because we keep picking up on all these things and then we just keep repeating them. And then we don't understand why the next generation keep repeating the same behaviors, keep repeating the same thing, because we modeled it early on. We modeled these limiting, harmful belief early on. Hatred is another belief or limiting belief or harmful belief that some people pick up on. And because of that, their lives are miserable, but they blame everybody else for it. Uh, so it's important that we pay attention to what we do, what we believe, our own beliefs, and what we are modeling for those kids. So that's what I would say to that.
How do you suggest you break that generational curse, carrying those same beliefs forward? Obviously, when you're grown, you're setting your ways. So how do you break that so you don't teach those same things to your children?
And that is an interesting thing when you say set in your ways. And that's one of those limiting beliefs, is that once you're grown, you're set in your ways. Once you're grown, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's a very limiting belief, is that if you believe that once you get a certain age, there's no hope for you for changing, then you don't have the desire to change because you believe you have bought into that concept. You believe that you cannot change because of your age, because of what you believe so long. So the first thing is that you have to recognize that you do have these beliefs that is impacting your life in a negative way. Now, negativity, a negative way have to be determined by that particular person. But if your life is not being productive based on your values and based on what you want to accomplish in life, then those beliefs are holding you back. So first of all, you have to recognize what is it you believe? And then if those beliefs is impacting your life in a way that's not productive, then you have to figure out what those beliefs are and then replace those beliefs with something more positive, with something more empowering. Because sometimes we think life happens to us, but really life happens because of us. We have a great impact on what happens in our lives. So just making sure that we recognize those limiting beliefs, because if you don't think you have a limiting belief, then therefore you won't do anything about it. So you have to first recognize it. And then if you recognize it, once you recognize that those beliefs exist, then you have to decide, do I really want to change? Do I really want to change? Do I really want to change? And it's the will to change. Some people don't want to change. Some people is okay with where they are because the change, thinking about changing is too painful. So that's the only way you're gonna change your life by changing your belief.